Hey guys, hope you had a happy holidays. Welcome back to another episode of Naia Lax updates with me, John, and my good pal Tucker.
We're back. We are in a new year. The new year of 2022 is upon us officially. Bowl season was in full effect, and I guess we can. Well, first off, show off the shirt. Show off the shirt. We have to.
Yeah,
We have to
I-
acknowledge the shirt first.
like a month ago, and it finally came in. I don't know where the heck it got shipped from, but yeah, so I got the logo on a shirt now. Shout out the guy who made the shirt and the original logo for me. So thank you. You know who you are.
True that. There you go. Very good. And now we can jump into, I guess, a little bit of bowl season. There was a lot of football being played, which we can segue into lacrosse thoughts. But any interesting games that you caught, bowl games the past week or so here?
Yeah, well, I know I'm about to alienate like half the fan base because I'm from Georgia, so obviously I'm a diehard dog, and I know we got a lot of Michigan fans that are probably watching this, but that was the main one down here for sure.
Pretty happy with that outcome, eh?
Uh yeah, but I mean, my whole thought was like I was hoping we'd win, but then at the same time I was like, well, I'm not going to celebrate until we take down Bama, which has been I don't even want to get into that rivalry if you want to call it that, but not
Everyone wants to beat Bama. I gotta say, I am not an Alabama fan. I was pumped to see Cincinnati put the season they did up. Um, Sad that it ended the way it did, but you play against Alabama with guys that size and that deep of a roster, you almost expect to see it. They're a force, they're a program. But I do think that the Alabama Georgia matchup is going to be a seriously good matchup because both teams have their own flair. Both teams are big, strong programs, both Southern programs. Um, I think maybe it's time that somebody dethrones Bama.
yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is the more we play them, eventually we're bound to win one of them. You just gotta, right? I mean,
Some
so I
great
mean,
logic.
you just keep playing them, and then one time you win. I'm not saying it happens every time, but I mean, eventually you win one. I would think.
You'd hope. I hope it's this time around. And then the Rose Bowl was obviously electric. As an Ohio State fan, it was a little nerve wracking at times because Utah put together a team that was like I didn't know that they were that good.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't honestly. I haven't been following it too much. I didn't even know Ohio State came back until like earlier today because I think it was like 35-14 or something, and I was just
It
like,
was
oh, I didn't come to play today.
Yeah, it was crazy. Nail biter came to the very end. Uh, Sad with the amount of injuries that happened in that game. They had like three players have to go to the hospital during the game, which is yeah, it was unheard of. Utah's quarterback got hit hard enough that he was concussed and couldn't move for several minutes. So yeah, he's only a sophomore, actually from the same town that I was born in. But it was sad to see that, but put together an amazing game. Rose Bowl is obviously an awesome venue, a cool piece of college football history. And now we get to look forward to the big Bama Georgia game coming up here in, I believe, about a week. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And part of the reason we mentioned like the bowl games is I don't remember who tweeted this, but a lot of people were talking about like partially the just people opting out of the bowl games, and then also like what if lacrosse had bowl games, which I had never thought about that, but it would be absolutely sick. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on these opt outs? Like,
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think I feel a little bit two-sided on it, I guess you could say. I was listening to another podcast, great podcast earlier today called Back of the Bird. Two NLL guys, three NLL guys now hosting a podcast talking about lacrosse, interviewing lacrosse players, mostly NLL, and talking about how viable lacrosse is as a professional sport. So I know that lacrosse, as it sits now, professionality wise, compared to football, we're in two different worlds. But if we think about it objectively, um, I think there's kind of give and takes to both. The big argument that I saw being made by people was that, oh, well, they opted out because it was a risk for them to get injured. And then the same argument could be made that they had the same risk to get injured all year, that it wasn't just, every football game you have a chance of getting injured. And then you had some people arguing that, hey, they should want to fight for their school at all costs and play through it and get through it. I think my perspective is I think if they're seniors, opting out makes a little bit more sense. And if they are like 100% going to get drafted, if they're in that position where they are a high draft pick, then it probably makes a little bit of sense. But at the same time, I think that a lot of these guys opt out as like sophomores and juniors, and they're opting out of both their education and their college athletic career. And I know for some of them, they're going to be low draft picks, if not free signees after the fact. So it's not like they're high draft picked opting out a lot of the time. And so I have to think that if these guys are not going to be high draft picks, then it seems like staying in school and getting your education or playing out your college career and seeing what happens makes sense. But it seems like the biggest reason these guys do opt out is simply to avoid injury at the last second. A lot of them are training, obviously, for the draft. It's a different situation. I personally think it's a little weird for players to opt out because we look at football as a past, and before the past couple of years, opting out was a little bit more foreign. And I think it's even weirder as lacrosse players because, you know, we think about this, even the highest Division I teams, they're not even in a similar situation to even consider opting out. It's a completely different sport, completely different atmosphere. There's not millions of dollars being thrown around. You know, it's not a $19 million signing bonus type situation. It's a, hey, graduate, have your education, and then play on the side kind of thing still. So that's a little strange. What were your thoughts on it?
Play some lax.
Yeah, exactly. Just to keep playing. It's so different. I think, I don't know. I saw everyone took to extreme, you know, they were either bashing the players for opting out or saying that the players were in their complete right to opt out. And I think it's kind of in between. It depends on where they are in their career, how high of a draft pick they're looking at, how much of an impact does it have on the team? Because if you have like, there were some teams out there during this bowl season that had like 19 of their starters or 19 of their top players opt out. Like they were starting all freshmen in this game. So if it's going to have that big of an impact on your team, I feel like you have to have a little bit more consideration for it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And while I don't think lacrosse will ever get bowl games, it would be so cool, especially for like the non like I think the biggest difference between the two sports is like so even for D1 college football, like it used to be two teams and now it's four. But like the lacrosse playoff system, like I think at the least amount is probably the NAIA where we have 8 make it and upper divisions 16, 32, whatever. So I mean, I think that would be a big issue for lacrosse, like just trying to find viable matchups. And then especially at our level, like it wouldn't happen just because a team from Michigan's not going to come down to play a team from Georgia just for the heck of it at the end of the
It's true.
season, just like financial wise doesn't make a lot of sense. But I mean, it would be a lot of fun to like
It would.
make that.
Well, and I mean, the thing about it is you look at all these bowl games, they all have major sponsors that normally are named for the bowl. You know, every bowl game has a sponsor name attached to it. You know, why couldn't you do it on a smaller scale for lacrosse? I mean, there are sponsors out there that would sponsor lacrosse style bowl games. Could you do it in the fall? Maybe it's like a fall preseason thing. I know some of the scrimmages that are put together by a lot of these D1 programs are kind of like bowl games. Like, for example, UNC and Ohio State meet every fall for a tournament style game. They have a great audience for it. That's almost like a mini bowl game out of season. So I feel like you could do it, whether it be preseason or in a playoff format. I think it would be pretty cool. And I also think the NAI is in a position lacrosse wise to make it happen even easier than a lot of other divisions.
That's a fair take. Fair take. I like it. And then speaking of kind of like venues and stuff like that, a couple people were asking about like the toughest venues we've played at, like some of our favorites, stuff like that. So if you want to get us started with that one.
Yeah, let's jump right into it. Now we're getting into the juicy part of the content, folks. This is going to be an interesting one. I have a few different takes here, and then I know you have a few different takes as well. Mine obviously being pretty heavy KCAC and WAC, as most KCAC teams kind of stay in that unless other teams come to them for the most part. I have not played outside of the KCAC or a WAC away ever, so I'll go with that. Best venues, I have 3. One's going to be a little biased. I think that Clarke has a great venue. Burroughs Field is recently turfed. It sits in a really beautiful part of Dubuque. If you've never been to Dubuque, it's extremely hilly. It's more recognizable compared to Wisconsin since right over the bridge. A lot of bluffs, a lot of cliffs, and where our field sits, it actually sits high enough up to clear the tree line. So when the sun sets, you have like a 360 view of the sunset. So it's not just one corner, it's like the whole field is a sunset. So for night games and for fall practices, it's unreal. And our landscape crew has planted various flowers and trees and bushes all around it to make it feel very exquisite. So a big fan of Burroughs Field. It's named after our former president, Suzanne Burroughs. Great venue, very picturesque, very natural, right on campus. It's one of the closer ones in the KCAC because you can walk from the dorms to the field in about 100 yards. So it's a great setup in that sense. Benedictine in Kansas, Atchison, Kansas, Benedictine College, I think has an incredible venue. They obviously are in a different situation than a lot of schools where they have a full football stadium because their football program's so big off campus, and it's just for their team. It's not a community stadium. It is the Benedictine College football stadium. And then they have the lacrosse and soccer field right in the middle of campus. And if you've never been to Benedictine, it's one of the bigger NAI schools that I've been to. Their enrollment is quite a bit higher, and it's kind of like the whole city revolves around this campus. So the way that Benedictine's field sits is it's kind of down at a low point. You're like right next to all their dorms. You're right next to their chapel. You're above is the campus, and behind campus is the river. So it's a really cool spot because especially for night games, the lights are on. You can see everything. You can see all of campus, and they have some of the closest seating. So they're all chair back, comfortable seats right along the sideline, along the far end. And it makes for an awesome atmosphere. Therefore, I listed it as kind of one of the harder venues I've played at. I've never been really heckled, I guess you could say, by Benedictine fans. I know some players on my team have, and it makes it very interesting because the chirps back and forth are always great. And then you have parents yelling at each other. The whole thing is an atmosphere thing for sure, the way it's set up. So it could be a harder venue for kind of a rivalry style game there. But nonetheless, an incredible venue. And the last one is actually not a KCAC or WAC venue for the best venues. It is Montreat College in Black Mountain, North Carolina. One of the first schools I toured my freshman year of high school, I want to say. You're probably more familiar with this field than I am, but I think it's an awesome spot. I wish it was a little bit further away from the highway because even when you're watching the live streams, you can see the highway right behind it. But I'm talking rolling hills, mountains in the background, giant trees. Like it is gorgeous. And for those who don't know about Montreat, their field is not on campus. It's like, I don't know, 2 or 3 miles from campus. So you actually have to drive down into this tiny little town. And then like right downtown is their athletic complex. So it's also kind of cool, I think, because it's in this town. And I would assume it rallies more support within the community because of that. But I think any campus and any field that's set up in the mountains is pretty gorgeous, and North Carolina's got a great setting. Montreat's baseball field is even better. It's like in the mountains. So the drone shots of that place are pretty sick too. But Montreat up there for some of the best venues. I will wait on the hardest venues. I'll let you go with your best venues first, your best fields, and then I'll jump into hardest, and then you can do the same.
Yeah. So for the best venues, I guess I'm kind of completely opposite. We played a lot of AAC games, and then we don't travel much is what I'll say about Reinhardt. Like, I don't know why. That's just kind of one of our things. Like most teams come to play us at our field, or we also go to Kaiser a lot. Like, so typically our spring break. So I also should add this, like our season starts a lot. We play a lot of home games because we start like January 31st. Like
Yeah, way earlier.
But like they probably have a game like late January. So like it's pretty easy for us to get KCAC or WAC teams to come down here and start the season out that way. So first off would be Reinhardt's field. Just it's nice turf. It's in our football stadium, so nice turf. You'll get heckled if you play play them there. I will tell you that. The women's lax team will go hard at you, and so will the parents.
Wow. Okay.
So, I mean, come ready is all I will say. I mean, you can ask some of my buddies on the Cumberland's teams. I mean, that's always fun when they come to town to play us there.
It looks like you guys you kind of have a cool little backdrop too, because I feel like there's a bunch of trees on the far end from what I remember that kind of surround it. It's very I definitely gives like Georgia vibes. Like that's the
Yeah.
funny thing is it looks like atmosphere so correct at Reinhardt.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then there's like a nice section behind one of the goals where people can sit too. So that makes it pretty cool as well. Um, Next on my list was actually Cumberland's. They have a very nice stadium. They have two different ones that I've played on. So for a tournament, I think we played on their football field, I'm assuming. So that one's very nice. And they have a grass field too. They may have turfed it by now, but when I played
I
them,
think they turfed it last year. It's like their soccer lacrosse complex.
yeah, okay. So they had a turf, but it was pretty cool, like a nice little grass venue before. And then they have some nice fans who they start like they have like a cheer squad kind of vibe going. Well, their parents like
Hmm.
someone will instruct them to like say a specific cheer and then they repeat it. So that can be a bit like intimidating a little bit when they get off and rolling.
It's a little unusual for lacrosse, but okay. I like that.
Yeah, kind of cool though. I can't lie. I dig it. And then this isn't one that I've ever played on, but I've seen all the live streams for it. Michigan Dearborn, that indoor field, I've always wanted to play there like so bad, but just never scheduled against them. So
Yeah, it's a cool venue. And I don't even know it's a field house. And I'm not completely familiar enough to tell you if it's on campus or off campus. I want to say it might be off campus because I think Michigan's played preseason games in there as well. So maybe it's part of the Michigan and Michigan Dearborn kind of system because Dearborn's kind of one of their smaller feeder schools. So I'm thinking maybe that's related, but it does. I agree. And the live streams are also pretty sharp most of the time. So it all looks really
yeah,
good.
and it seems very loud there. Like they got a good fan base. The other WAC teams go there. It's
Yeah.
always very
The indoor field house bet is always a good one for WAC and KCAC teams. Not many KCAC teams play indoor games, which is foolish, but there's just not enough indoor facilities. But the WAC, they do a lot. Like we played Cleary up in a bubble indoors, which was actually awesome. It was a great venue. They had like 3 bubbles and a field house next to each other. So there was like high school lacrosse going on one, our game on another, and then like a softball practice in the other one. So, and I know Concordia apparently does a lot of their practices indoors at that same facility a lot of the year as well. So the WAC teams are doing something smart playing indoors with the amount of snow they get.
yeah, definitely. And then I guess another one I just thought of was, as I said, we went to Kaiser a lot for like our spring break trips. Just playing down at Kaiser is awesome. Great fans, great environment, the weather, as people were arguing on Twitter this week about like the weather in Tennessee versus Florida, which is pretty amusing, but just being down in Florida and then typically having like a couple other teams there while you're playing like on spring break was always fun too. So definitely a big shout out to Kaiser for the stuff they do on spring break, making it a fun atmosphere.
Yeah, that's true. That's it. You bring up a good point between Reinhardt and really even the Florida teams, all the Southern teams. They're great because you guys can start playing so much earlier. I mean, Weber included. You guys start playing so much earlier in the South. Your games are going earlier. It lines up for a lot of the Midwest and Northern teams to come down on their spring breaks. Like that's a huge piece because our season's not starting till like March 9th this year. Like our games are packed into 1 month, which is nuts, but like that's the way it is. It was negative 15 at the lowest in Dubuque this week. So as soon as it's not negative, we're expected to be outdoor practicing. So it's the scheduling dynamic is obviously a little bit different there. So going down to the South for games, and I know SCAD used to do that too. Like they used to have people down for spring break stuff. That works out really well, and it does. I love that it allows teams from up here to go experience lacrosse down there in a different position. And I mean, I think it exposes people to more venues too.
Yeah, for sure. And then I guess my next question would be, what were some of the harder ones you played at?
Yeah, there's one team, and whoever's watching from this team right now, you guys are gonna get a kick out of this because I know you guys were trying to razz me on this one. Number one hardest venue to play in by far, and I'm gonna say this right now, knowing actually they play at Clarke this year, so that makes me feel a little better. Columbia College in Columbia, Missouri. It's an amazing venue. It's a great field. It's several blocks from Mizzou's campus. It's a great vibe. There's like a bar people watch across the street. So like during COVID and everything, people are watching from behind the fence across the street, no issue. So even during COVID, this past time around, we played them with no fans actually in the stands. It was still a crazy atmosphere, which is a big testament to them. But no, it's a tough atmosphere, especially if they know anything about you as a player, or their media department there, their broadcasts are really great, their stats are really great. They publish like a pregame kind of thing ahead of the time to tell you who the players in the other team are to watch. And I can remember this last time we played them, between an article that you had published on Lax All Stars and something that they had put out in their school as like the kind of players to watch, they were calling me by number and name. Like, and I'm talking this again, there was no fans in the stands at this time, but they were lined on both fences. And there was kind of like a section of students on one side and a section of students on the other side on each goal side. And I mean, they were like chirping hard. They had my stats up. They were on everything. I'm pretty sure one kid pulled up my Instagram. Like I was actually impressed. Like, I think I was laughing at the time because I was so impressed at how in depth they were. And like, you could tell they were going a little bit of pregame prior to coming to this lacrosse game as well. So it made it even tougher. I've always kind of enjoyed that about Columbia. I've played there at Columbia twice now. And I think other players on my team and other teams have had a harder time. Like, they let it get to them a little bit too much. But you have to know, going into Columbia, they're going to know a lot about what's going on with the opposing team. They do a really good job kind of scouting, and their fans know what's going on as well, because they're actually consuming lacrosse media, which is even funnier in my mind. But it makes for a tough venue to play at. But also, it's going to be a good time, and it's always warm weather in Columbia, Missouri. So it's up there as one of the great ones, but easily the hardest venue to play at because of their fans. Benedictine, again, is on my kind of hardest list. Not for me necessarily, but I know other people have been kind of heckled more. Again, I love that kind of stuff. Like, it cracks me up. And again, it's the proximity of their stands kind of along the sideline. Like, the out of bounds line and the beginning of their stands are maybe 5 feet. And there's no railing. Like, there's nothing separating the front row of the stands from the field. So when you're out of bounds and you're having to bring a ball in from out of bounds on that line right there, you can hear them all behind you chirping you. So that's up there as one of the harder ones. And then I think this is kind of an unusual one. But Concordia in the WAC, I was recruited there early on, stayed on campus overnight. I know about their campus, know a bunch of people there, but playing there for the first time in the middle of tons of snow surrounding the field 2 years ago, I think, or last year, that was tough, because even on cold days, they have fans who know your tendencies, what to expect. They're going to heckle. It gets a little tense sometimes. There was a fight that broke out in our game. I think part of it was just the atmosphere and how heckling was going on there. So I think Concordia is definitely up there as well. They also have one of the cooler stadiums. They have a really cool kind of stadium and a great locker room because of their football team. But it's always freezing cold there. The wind comes off the highway and just blows on the campus. So you can guarantee it's going to be cold, and it makes it that much more miserable. It's a hard venue to play in.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a rough time.
Yeah, man. The freezing cold temperatures plus people yelling, like, it just makes for a great time.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that one. So for myself, the hardest ones that come to mind would be, so I guess I need to explain, like, when you say some of these southern ones have nice turf, 3 or 4 years ago, they did not have nice turf. So, I mean, they have that nice stadium now. I think they play lacrosse in. Like, I know they did that for the championships, but
Yeah, I think so.
like, swamp and SCAD. Like, I swear it was a swamp. Like, and they had a little marching band that would come out and play during the game. Not a ton of fans that would go, but like there'd be like a drum line sometimes. And then
That's such like an NAI lacrosse, like, strange atmosphere thing.
And then I feel like, I could be wrong, but like the refs there seem to only ref SCAD games. So it's like a little bit, I'm not saying it was a little unfair at times, but a little hostile with the refs at times. But so that could be a little bit nerve-wracking, just the field slipping and sliding, mosquitoes, gnats and stuff. But I'm pretty sure they play on some nice turf now. So that's
I was gonna say they're old. I know what you're talking about. Their old fields too, because it looked like just a bunch of rec fields almost.
It
was
like
very
you would literally
strange.
drive for miles up until like you hit the South Carolina border. I think it might even technically be in South Carolina, that
Was
field.
it that far off their campus?
Yes, like literally, it was just like
Wow.
yeah, at athletic field. And I was like, I swear I'm in South Carolina right now, not even in Georgia anymore. But so that was always a fun one. And then I didn't get to play Aquinas at this, but the national championship game when we played Madonna at Aquinas, that was crazy. And I mean, I'm sure it was because it was just a national tournament championship game, but also it being at Aquinas so close to Madonna, like the fan spread was probably like 40 of our fans to a couple hundred of the Madonna ones. So that was pretty nerve wracking. But they have a nice field. I'll give them that. That's one of the
Yeah.
nicest I've been at for NAIA, and just anytime I watch their streams, packed head to toe fans. So that's a good one. I'm trying to think another hard one. Missouri Baptist was a tough one.
I was about to say that. And I don't think you know this yet, but so I played there my freshman year and then played them again last year, my junior year. Completely different type of field. They built a stadium around this field. So it's like, it is a crazy, crazy nice venue at Missouri Baptist now, like one of the best for sure. I should have included that in best venues, but it makes it even harder to play there now. Like they have fans at games.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. Cause I mean, I feel like they had a really nice field, but I don't think there was something weird about it. I remember like not seating on it or something. Like people
Yeah.
had like chairs, I want to say, or something.
Yep, that's exactly what it was the first time around. Oh, no, I take that back. I didn't play at Missouri Baptist freshman year. The women's team did, and we had to watch because their men's team was away or something. So we were sitting there in chairs on the sideline watching this game. That's right. I remember this now. And it's also interesting thing about Missouri Baptist. It is right by, I think, Christian Brothers Academy, which is like the top Missouri team. You can see their stadium from Missouri Baptist Stadium. It's within eyesight. So that's kind of cool. And then behind the Missouri Baptist field on the other side, they have a bunch of lacrosse fields. They have like 10 rec lacrosse fields. We got done with our game and there was like 200 kids playing lacrosse in St. Louis, Missouri on this field. And I was like, yo, this is nuts. The game is growing, A, and B, what a bunch of lacrosse congested into one area.
Yeah, for sure. That's always nice.
Yeah, very, very different one right there. Any other kind of venues that stick out to you or hard?
Um, Kaiser always made interesting games when we played down there. I think that was more so just that we were such intense rivals. And then I think it was either my junior or senior year where Jake Padden had just came over from being their starting goalie to being ours after he had beaten them in the championship. Shout out Jake. Good friend of mine. But so that was intense. And then like one of our guys got hit kind of high late in the game. And then so there's kind of like an awkward pause because our guy got hurt and he got up and it was like our face-off guy. And so he over to the bench. And then one of us just yells to Jake Padden and Cage, "Hey, go Jake Padden." So then we all start like yelling that, and then they get annoyed. And then this was a horrible idea. We took a team photo at like the 50.
No.
Things got heated. Things got out of hand.
That's an NFL move right there.
It was a lot of fun, but yeah, there was some.
Were you at like their really nice field, or have they changed locations since you played there?
I mean, it was all right, like, but I think they've gotten a new one since then.
Was there a golf course behind it?
I don't think so.
Okay, I think maybe they have a new one now because it looks like they're like 50 yards off a golf course, which makes for like awesome scenery. Like, not gonna lie, like it looks really, really nice. But I'm wondering if that's a new one now. I mean, Kaiser's got a lot going for them, and they're in Florida. So again, what else do you want? Warm weather in lacrosse, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It's kind of like, I mean, Weber's in a good spot too, being like that close to the ocean. I would imagine Weber's probably a harder venue to play at as well.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Another thing people wanted to talk to us, or people want us to discuss, was kind of some under the radar programs and players. If you want to get us started with that.
Yeah, I don't have players as of right now. For those listening to the pod, simply because I don't know who's on rosters. It's a big question mark right now. We were talking about this a little bit pre-show as well, but it's kind of anyone's game. I did see a few teams started to post rosters. I don't know how many of them are cemented simply because players may be transferring in this spring semester. So I don't have players. I have programs. I have 3 programs that I titled underrated slash overlooked programs or teams. Maybe these programs were big back in the day, kind of lost momentum, whatever it may be. First up is Siena Heights in Adrian, Michigan. They are in the same town as Adrian, I believe, which is also a Michigan school, a Division III school. Not a bad program at all there either. But Siena Heights, when I came into Clarke as a freshman, they had a pretty big roster continually. That was one of the schools that I was considering and was recruited heavily to because it was not too far from me. Former head coach there, Ed Maloney, who passed away in June, was an incredible impact on the Siena Heights lacrosse program. He founded the program in 2010, brought the team to the first 4 of 6 WAC championship tournaments under him. Ed Maloney was one incredible coach. I can remember, and the reason they're kind of on this list as well is he would send out handwritten notes to a lot of recruits. I would get a handwritten note from him probably like once a month, updating me on how their program's doing, how he's doing, like on Siena Heights letterhead. Like he always put a little picture in there of the program. And I was like, that is the coolest classic recruiting tool of all time. Because I was even getting notes from him checking in on how I was doing after I had committed to my first school. So like I'm talking the check-in process on this guy, and the commitment to recruiting was incredible. I was really sad to see that he passed away in June after how much he put into that program. I mean, he founded the program in 2010. So that Siena Heights program is there because of Ed Maloney. So kind of a cool one there. Spencer Masick, I want to say I'm pronouncing his name correct. Spencer, hopefully I'm pronouncing your last name correct. He has taken over as head coach, so best of luck to him. I believe this will be his first full season at the helm after the passing of Ed. 2021, due to COVID stuff, they played an abbreviated schedule this past year as well. I know Michigan had some more battles COVID wise than we did in Iowa and a lot of the rest of the country. We saw that with Dearborn as well. They went 3-2. They played 5 games in 21. Among those 5 games, kind of the headlines, I think, of their 2021 campaign was they beat Cumberland's. That's a great thing to have if you're only playing 5 games. And they also beat Oakland University 20-5. And Oakland is an MCLA program. They've had some pretty good players come to their program. I've actually seen them play in person back in high school when they were playing Kent State's club team. A bunch of buddies were on the team. But they're a pretty well put together MCLA program, and Siena Heights beat them 20-5. So that was a pretty big statement win. Those were kind of their 2 big wins. Again, they only played 5 games, came out with a winning record in 21. Obviously their coach passed away shortly after. So a lot of tough things going on for them, but I'm really excited to see where Siena Heights goes as a program. I know that they're pretty well supported by the school. They have a great stadium. They're in a great location. And I obviously played against a bunch of their guys in a box tournament recently, and I was impressed with them as well. Jumping into the box was cool to see kind of some field guys from the NAI do well in box. 2019 was their last full season pre-COVID altogether. They went 8-6 overall, pretty good record. They were one of the upper tier teams in the WAC at the time. I think this is kind of their big year to make a return, play a full schedule, hopefully. So excited to see what happens with Siena Heights. And then next up, I have Mount Vernon Nazarene University in Mount Vernon, Ohio, not too far outside Columbus, not too far from me right now, actually, either. Head coach Ryan Farr, my first high school coach, kind of a funny thing there. Always loved him as a coach. That was before I transferred high schools. He put together an incredible program in the middle of rural Ohio. I was driving there. Players from around the area were driving there because it was considered a club program before Ohio went varsity. And so we had a powerhouse program in Uniontown, Lake, Ohio, which is very country, very middle of nowhere, awesome town. But Ryan Farr put together an awesome program there. He then went on to coach, I believe, the women's program at Louisville High School down the road from Uniontown Lake, and then jumped over to start the program at Mount Vernon Nazarene. His background is in ministry, I believe, as a pastor. So he's kind of got an interesting background coming into coaching. But really like what they're doing at Mount Vernon Nazarene from a media perspective, especially. From day one, their social media has been top tier. Their marketing has been top tier. They're putting out player graphics and stats like after every game, I noticed on social media. So pretty cool there. Um, they're in year 4 now, I believe, as a program. This will be their 4th season, which is crazy to think. They're in a kind of a weird situation where they are a WAC member, they are NAI, but they're still playing a lot of club teams, whether it be Great Lakes or NCLL or some MCLA teams. They're mixing in a pretty heavy chunk of club programs in their regular season, and then mixing in several D3 programs from Michigan and Ohio, and then playing a few NAI teams. So it's they're in a little bit of an odd position compared to a lot of NAI programs still, how they're still playing heavy club and D3 and then a few NAI. I think that's part of their overall building process. From what I can understand, they want to really solidify their roster, their size. Their roster size has been pretty good the past couple of years. So I think that more than anything is a strategy for them to build, now being in year 4. 2021, last year, they played a full schedule. They won 4 games, lost 5. All the wins, from my understanding, came from D3 and club games, and they played upper tier NAI teams as well. So they had a pretty good challenge. They had a pretty good amount of teams to see. Very, very, very excited to see what happens at Mount Vernon Nazarene. Cool location, really cool school. Love what they're doing on the marketing side. A lot of respect for Coach Farr. So looking forward to seeing what happens at Mount Vernon Nazarene. They're a newer, underrated program, I would say. And then Ottawa, Kansas. This is a team that has been very good historically. They have a Canadian pipeline, you could say. They have a lot of Canadian players coming down. Pearson Willis, I believe is his name, stayed on as a grad assistant after playing there. Great player. Enjoyed playing against him my freshman year. And I don't want to say they're in a rebuilding stage, but I know they're trying to build their roster size back up. Again, cool university, cool spot. Kansas has more lacrosse than a lot of people think. So I know that they're able to recruit a lot of kids from like Kansas City, and even over the border into St. Louis. Like they're recruiting a lot of kids from either in state or right next door. Seth Matlock is their coach. He's in their 5th season. He's in his 5th season now there. So he's accomplished a lot while being there. 2021, he was 5-7. So this past season, they did play 5-7. I felt when we played them, they were still a very well put together team. I know that they had a lot of younger faces because older guys had graduated. Roster size was a little bit smaller, but still very well put together team. Shout out to whoever puts together the uniforms, because their uniforms and their helmets are always sick. And then 2019 was kind of their big year. The first year I played them, they were 7-6 with wins over Ambrose and Columbia in 2019. So Ottawa in Kansas, very strong program. Expect them to be back in the top of the KCAC very quickly. They were pretty high up last year still, and I think that probably just continues. It's always great when you can have a coach who's been there 5 years, going into 6 years now. That shows dedication. You know how to recruit kids in the area. You build relationships. So again, it goes back to like we were talking about. The longer a coach is somewhere, the better the relationships that are built. So Ottawa is my 3rd underrated, overlooked, sometimes forgotten about team, I guess you could say, but always impressed with what they put together. What do you got?
Yeah, I really like your list. That's a great one. Ottawa is one that I thought about putting on mine as well. So definitely like that one. I started mine off with Tennessee Wesleyan, and they're a pretty well-known program. They've been around for quite a while, but they don't always get the respect they deserve. I feel like coming from an AAC standpoint, like we know they're always going to be tough outing. Like they're very athletic most years, got a couple really good players. But I don't think they always get the credit like nationally that I feel they deserve.
I agree.
One thing I noticed when I went back and looked at it, they actually had the 2nd team All-American faceoff guy. I think it was Kyle Gazor. I hope I pronounced that right. Sorry if I didn't, Kyle. But the kid had a great year. They have a couple of defensemen coming back. The one thing I'm a little worried about, I think they had the same starting goalie for like 3 or 4 years, my buddy Austin. And I think he's finally out of eligibility. So that's something to keep your eye on.
Finally out of eligibility. Man, that's tough.
That kid was a stud, but I mean, he'd been there a while.
and you know what? They do a lot with – I've never played there. We were supposed to and it got canceled, but their venue doesn't look to be the nicest venue. but they do a lot with their venue, and it looks like they have fans there pretty continually. And you have to consider, I agree with you 100%. And they continually have success year in, year out. Like they are putting together strong seasons almost every year, it looks like.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And then my next one, this one's not really so much under the radar as I think it's just because they're in such a stacked conference, they don't get as much attention. But I had Lords on there as one of the teams because I mean, if you think about it, they finish in the top 3 or 4 in the WAC, but maybe nationally they don't get as much recognition. But I mean, they had the stud LSM, Nate Allen. I think he was a freshman last year. That kid was just unreal if you watched them play last year. And they're one of the few that have posted their rosters I saw. And they got Tyler Pizzot, the standout attackman, back for I think his 5th year. So I mean, if you watched them play Reinhardt in the national tournament, he was doing some impressive things, especially around the crease, making some ridiculous shots where I thought, all right, they got him stuffed. And then, wow, that kid just spun off someone, got an easy goal.
Yeah, there are a lot of guys. Lords is cool. Another school I considered, a lot of guys from my area and rival high schools went to Lords or are still there. So I'm familiar with the roster a little bit, but like you said, they're a well put together roster. Shout out to my buddy Cody Carson, who was the grad assistant the past 2 years here. He is now on the Lords golf team. So
Oh,
strange twist of eligibility. He played his club ball at Kent State and then went into grad coaching and is now on the golf team at Lords. So there's a strange little NAI lacrosse twist right there. But no, you're right. That's Tyler coming back, and then I know their defense and their LSMs are always strong. They had a mean face-off guy when I played them freshman year. I don't think he's there anymore. Dude was a monster. And they've always seemed to be strong face-off wise too, it seems like.
yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on that one. And then my final one was actually Taylor University. So that's one that I feel just doesn't get much respect at all for some reason. I guess just being in another tough conference, but definitely underrated. And they actually have 2 very good players. I don't think get nearly enough credit either. They have Aiden Craig, who seems like mostly an assist man to his buddy Emmett. But Aiden, I think it was his freshman year last year. His stats: 18 goals, 51 assists. So when
Yeah.
you're putting up numbers like that, that's pretty special. And as I said, Emmett Wintek, he's kind of the other man to that tandem. Aiden's feeding him the ball. Man had 42 goals and 3 assists. So definitely a shooter. I'd say the one thing for them is having 2 guys who can play is really nice. But I think when you're competing in WAC and against KCAC opponents, definitely getting maybe 1 or 2 more scoring options would definitely benefit them a lot. But
Yeah.
definitely 2 is on.
I think that it might be fair to say they're the most slept on NAI team across the board. Played their freshman year. It was I want to say their first year of NAI competition. What a lot of people don't know is that they had been playing as a club team pretty organized, it sounds like, for a few years and had support from the university prior to becoming NAI. We didn't know that. A lot when you look at a lot of teams, there's not enough information to tell you that they were teams prior in different leagues, whatever it may be. We showed up freshman year. Taylor's in Indiana. It's in, for lack of better terms, the way we came, pretty middle of nowhere, Indiana. I know they're not too far from Fort Wayne, which has a pretty good amount of lacrosse. But it's the campus, and that's about it that I could tell. They have a great football stadium. They have a great practice turf. But then their lacrosse field kind of sits on the backside of campus. Last time I played, it was very rainy. It was majority mud, but it was still very, very well put together. Awesome graphics going along the fence, very lacrosse specific. Pretty good amount of fans for being freezing and raining. I was majorly impressed with that. I know that they've built on that quite a bit since then. They had 2 brothers when I played them that were really good. And I believe one of them has graduated since. Their roster, a lot of their roster is from Indiana. They're doing a great job building out a roster from in-state. The campus seems pretty cool, to be honest with you. I think that Taylor's only going to get better from here. And I think they're doing that while being slept on a lot of times. I know that their coach originally had moved over from softball or something like that, or maybe he is now. They had a coaching change that they went through, but it seems like they're still putting together a pretty great roster. They seem to be very well supported by the university. Obviously, their roster has talent now, as you were just saying. And I do think that they are kind of that underdog that you forget about in Indiana. You think about Indiana Tech, but you don't really think about Taylor very often. And I think that has a lot going for them, surprise factor wise. You don't really know what's going on at Taylor. And then boom, they have a pretty great team every year. And they're probably, this must be their fourth season in the NAI now, third or fourth, I want to say. So they're still pretty young. But I agree. I do think they might be the most slept on across the country NAI wise right now.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely one of those ones. And I guess our final topic that people wanted to talk about was we've talked about the new coaches a good bit, but people wanted to know kind of our thoughts on them. Which ones might be the most successful at their new ventures?
Yes. I don't have the list of coaches' names. So guys, if you're listening, refer to the article on Lax All Stars, please, for my lack of knowledge right now. I'm gonna pull up the Twitter here real quick too and see if we're missing any questions as we go. My personal take on this right now on coaches that I think are going to have immediate success. I can only address this with immediate success because I think some of these programs will do better long term than other programs simply because support and recruiting. But with the rosters they have in place, the teams that I think will have an immediate impact with new coaches right now, off the top of my head, I think Aquinas and Reinhardt both retain a lot of great players, are both in areas to recruit a lot of good players. They're in hubs that will really work out well, regardless of who is a coach, in my opinion. So I think immediate success goes to them. The rest of the programs with new coaches, I think that they are going to have to build out for a year or two, and that's okay. Like that's gonna happen. It just comes down to how long does the coach stay there and how much support is the university willing to put into lacrosse. But my take right now, Reinhardt and Aquinas, immediate impacts with new coaches.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Those were my exact two for immediate success. I mean, Jokins had a lot of success back to his club days in Georgia at Kennesaw State. I know he's a great coach, X's and O's wise. So he's inheriting a great roster. It will be interesting to see how he builds it long term. But year one should be rocking and rolling. Aquinas, great coach in Claiborne moving over. I think he came from a D3 school. It may have been a D2.
He is the former coach at Monmouth in Illinois. Very familiar with him. Great coach. Great coach. Built a great program at Monmouth. I think he's even in a better area to build a better program at Aquinas now.
Yeah, and if you look at his roster, he has a couple of studs at attack, so that'll help him year one right away. I would not be shocked to see if they made the NAIA tournament year one with him. And then a good one that'll be built in the future. I think he's going to struggle year one. Just I don't know the place the roster's at now. And I know a couple of their stud offensive players graduated, but I think Montreat hit a home run for a hire. And I'm going to try and pronounce it. I think it's Lo Mueller from, I think he came from Queens, if I'm correct, a powerhouse.
Sounds
D2.
correct.
Looked like they were always in the top 20 the past couple of seasons. So it's pretty rare that we've seen kind of these high level D2 assistants get the head coaching jobs at NAIA schools, especially when they're not really moving to a traditional powerhouse. Like the move from Monmouth to Aquinas kind of made sense, like powerhouse in the NAIA team. But you don't really think of Montreat as snagging like an upper tier D2 assistant too often. It seems like they'd hiring the past two had been younger coaches. So that was kind of an interesting move to see how that'll do in the future.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. I think that maybe they have not immediate success, but quick turnaround in a couple of years here, simply because they're in an awesome area. Like the thing that attracted me there originally was that I love to hike, I love to be outdoors, kayak, be completely in nature. And like their campus is built into the side of a mountain in a beautiful community. There's a lake on campus. You can have incredible hiking destinations right off of campus. Like what these guys, what these players are able to do at Montreat, if you're inclined to be outdoors at all, is incredible. Like that's the biggest sell is the atmosphere. You're not too far from Asheville, North Carolina, which is, I want to say it's 30 minutes or so from campus. It's a pretty big town. It's got a minor league baseball team. It's got high school lacrosse there. It has everything you can need in a city. So recruiting kids out of Asheville is a big, probably a pretty easy grab, I would assume, to get kids out of there. And not to mention North Carolina as a whole has pretty good lacrosse. So recruiting in state, I feel like is going to be an easier grab there with a good head coach as well. I just think that the venue, the town, and the campus have a lot going for them that could attract a lot of students if recruited correctly. So I agree with you. I think I think, a quicker turnaround than a lot of programs.
Yeah, for sure. And then I know someone wanted to talk to you. I would defer to you on this because you are the equipment expert for Lax All Stars. Someone was asking about Pro Sevens and helmets. So take
Yeah,
it
this
away
was
there.
a shout out Washed Up Lax Bros. We enjoy your content always. It's humor and game growing. You have to love the mix of that. The comment was simply Pro Sevens, which we all, Pro Sevens were the arguably one of the coolest helmets, if not the coolest helmet I ever wore. I want to say I wore it for like middle school and 2 years of high school, so not for very long before the R and then the S came out, and then now the XSR. But Pro Sevens are probably the most liked helmet, I would say, of all time. They kind of fit in right with there with the CPXR and the Pro 7. They rivaled each other. They were different looks. If you had a bigger head, you were probably wearing a Pro 7. But they were very sleek and yep, tribute. RIP to Pro 7s. We miss you guys. Pro 7s were awesome helmets. So Washed Up Lax Bros, there's your answer. They got 15 likes on that one comment. So that was pretty hilarious. Preseasons, Bella the Laxer asks preseason women's content. I will be honest with you, Bella. I don't think I'm speaking for myself, but also John, probably you as well. I don't follow the NAI women's game enough to be able to do it justice. I know which programs are powerhouse programs. Shout out Benedictine. You guys put together a mean women's program every single year filled with some studs. You're very good. Women's lacrosse at Benedictine is insanely impressive. That's about all I know as far as NAI women's content. I would refer you over to the NAI women's lacrosse page. I believe it's just NAIW Lax. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I mean she does a great job. We kind of consider
Incredible job.
your account, kind of anything we can do to give them some advice. So what I will do going forward, I don't think she's going to do any sort of podcast.
Maybe we get her on the podcast and we'll do a women's episode.
We either get her on the podcast, or I know she definitely said she'd be willing to give me some tips here and now again. So we can definitely get you more women content going forward on the podcast. I know one question specifically was, could Kaiser win the tournament again for the women's side? And the only thing I would say about that is I believe they had quite a heavy senior class off the top of my head. So it really just depends on people taking their fifth years due to COVID or not. And then a couple other things I'd like to see is what happens with SCAD going forward. Because I know last year the men's coach was actually coaching the women's and the men's. So like sometimes he would have to be at his men's game and then miss the women's and then vice versa. So it just seemed like there was a lot going on. And then with SCAD, just they didn't have much of a fall season due to COVID at all. So it'll be really interesting to keep your eye on SCAD and if they can kind of take back over the reins of the women's side.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And it's about all I know too, is when I think of strong lacrosse, I think of Kaiser and Benedictine on the women's side, just from my knowledge, and excuse my ignorance, everybody. But that's kind of what I know. I guess we can refer to NAI women's lacrosse and learn some more from her, and maybe get her on the pod here, because I know she listens, and I appreciate that support. Would love to learn more. Actually, would love to know more about that, because there's a lot of expansion going on in NAI women's lacrosse. I know that for sure. Wayland Academy Athletics asks, NAI all name team. I can't think of any off the top of my head. We will put together an all name team. I think it's about time. Maybe an all flow team. Maybe we have a flow chart, So we'll see what happens there. NAI men's lacrosse recognition status. Not 100% sure what that means. I'm assuming that they're referring to within the NAI how lacrosse is still an invitational sport.
Yeah, I guess that could be one way to interpret it. I wasn't really entirely sure if they meant just kind of like how other organizations look at us, which I think is something that we're definitely getting better at every year. What are we on, year 6 now? I mean, kind of losing.
Yeah, something like that. And I have actually, after the last podcast too, if I can find this real quick, Tom Evans reached out to me. Tom, I hope you're okay with me saying that, but Tom Evans reached out to me via Instagram after our last episode, and just had some questions. His son's being recruited, wanted to know more about the NAI, where we are as a level and everything like that. Tom, love you reaching out. That was amazing. we are both 100% open to answering those questions. That's what it's going to take to grow NAI lacrosse and to be more recognized, is ask people about their experiences. I told Tom this, and I would tell anyone this. If you want to know how NAI lacrosse is recognized or compares to other levels, look at some of the rosters, look at some of the schedules in these teams. A lot of teams in the South play Division II teams every year. Benedictine plays Rockhurst every year. There are D2 teams getting mixed into most NAI schedules. And if not Division II, almost every NAI team plays Division III schools at least once a year. And they're mostly regional, so you can get a good comparison regionally how the NAI compares to a Division II or Division III level regionally. So the biggest question we'll always have on the NAI level is, where does it compare skill wise and level of play? I think the level of play continues to get better and better and better. There's a more consistent level of play we're starting to see across the board. With more teams become more players are being recruited. You have a higher skill level normally. We're still developing that level of play, but most of the time, and you can refer to these D2 and D3 and even high MCLA scores, the NAI competes very well. And I think the biggest thing, I told Tom this as well, and I would tell anyone this again, is the NAI does a really good job combining academics and athletics compared to a lot of NCAA schools. They work really hard to get their student athletes to be students first. You're going to get a good education and come out with a great education from an NAI school, as well as having a great lacrosse experience, in a lot of cases with a good scholarship. So that's kind of what's going for the NAI lacrosse wise, especially on a recognition status right now.
Yeah, definitely. And just kind of one way to look at it, I'd say, and this kind of goes for upper levels as well. So typically, like an upper level team from one division can compete very well at kind of the next tier. So like top 5, top 8 NAI schools, pretty competitive with middle to upper middle tier D2 and D3 programs. Where you might see some differences, like obviously like a team like Tampa compared to like NAI schools. That's not really a fair comparison because Tampa's more like one school per se. So something like that. And then kind of like a lower end D2, D3 team. Like we played a couple of those and we might at Reinhardt, this is when I played, we might beat them by 25. Like that's just kind of how it is. So NAI
It's
is
true.
very with D2, D3.
Mm-hmm. I would also even add too, I think the biggest differences from all of these levels in the top teams to the lower teams is team and the togetherness of the team, not the level of play that each player's on. I find that most of the time, especially out of season, solid NAI players can compete very well with any division in the NCAA player wise. I mean, you'll mix it up. You'll be playing against a D1 goalie or a D3 defender. NAI players fit in just fine individual skill level wise with every other level. And again, I think obviously every level jumps a little bit in player skill, but I think that NAI players are taught to be able to hang with any other player on a skill level basis. Obviously, I can't speak to the D1 All-Americans. I haven't played many of them, but I can tell you from a skill level perspective, especially out of season, you see NAI players skill wise hanging with a lot of other divisions, and that's just, again, it goes back to how these teams are built out, how big their rosters are, how much the university supports them. Many of the Division II high level and Division I high level, they are operated like a very well-rounded college football program. They're well funded, they're well put together, they have tons of support staff. That's what it comes down to, is the infrastructure your program is built around to elevate the level of skill within your players is kind of the way I see that one there. And I think the NAI just continues to grow with it. I think it continues to get better and better. We see teams popping up all over the place. We forgot to mention Arizona Christian last time. Arizona Christian is a very West team. Obviously we saw, a team added in Irvine, California with Westcliff. Now we see Arizona Christian. Arizona Christian seems to be going more of an MCLA route, just schedule wise, and that's okay. That's what College of Idaho does as well. But as these programs continue to expand, so does the level of play, so does the recognition, so does everything on the NAI lacrosse side.
Yeah, I couldn't have said that better myself.
I'm out of breath now, man. I gotta catch up,
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or anything you think we forgot? If you want to pull up Twitter, I think we got
Yeah,
most.
A lot of great questions there. A lot of great comments, some familiar faces. Good to hear from everyone in here. One thing I would add as well, and I put this out on my personal Twitter. I get a lot of questions from parents and younger players from middle school through high school on how they can get to the next level, how they can play collegiate lacrosse. Many of them want to go to an NAI school. Off the top of their head, they already know what NAI school they want to go to. They just want to know how to get their foot in the door and how to end up on a roster. I will be honest with you. I think that any player anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world for that matter, has the ability to be on a college lacrosse roster without question. It totally comes down to how much you're willing to network, how much you're willing to work, and how much time you're willing to put in the gym, on the field, shooting in your backyard. I have never been one that has said it's play on a travel team or bust. It's not. There are so many lacrosse programs everywhere across the country. There's so many college programs. There's so many roster spots. If you're willing to promote yourself and work as hard as you can to elevate your personal game outside of your season, there is a college lacrosse roster spot with your name on it, willing to open the door to you, without question. So if you're in an area like I was, where you can't play travel lacrosse, or travel lacrosse is out of your budget because it's outrageously expensive in some spots, don't sweat it. Go to combines, go mow the lawn, make money, go to showcases. There's tons of college showcases where tons of coaches go and you can play for one day. Go to college camps. Anytime you see a prospect camp open up at a school you're interested at, go to the prospect camp. It's like $50. Just get yourself out there in other ways. You don't have to be in a travel team. It's not going to hurt you, obviously, if it's a possibility for you, but you look at so many players in the NAI that have had major success, and at every level that have had major success. They are from non-traditional lacrosse areas. They were not on travel teams. They simply built themselves up, worked in the offseason, and became the players they are today. So if you're listening to this and you have a desire to play college lacrosse, there's a spot, there's a roster spot with your name on it. If you're willing to work and promote yourself in the NAI, especially, reach out to coaches, send coaches emails, follow them on Twitter, follow them on Instagram. You have no idea how much it can do if you just follow a coach on Twitter, because you're already in his point of view just from that follow on Twitter. So be proactive and connect. And that's my recruiting seminar.
No, you couldn't. Like, once again, you took that perfectly. One thing I will add is, if you're interested in getting recruited, me and Tucker are both helping out teams currently in one way or another. So definitely shoot us messages. We'll get it out to people. And for me personally, if you email me or just send me a DM of your film, I will send it to coaches. I don't care. Shoot me it. Tell me who you want me to send it to. Me and Tucker probably have a relationship with that coach, and it'll reach their DMs. It'll reach them, and hopefully we'll go from there.
That's right. And in the age of social media, guys, the more social media you have as a recruit and as an athlete, the better, because the more people you connect to with the tap of a button. I'll add to that as well. Well, we're not going to come at this from a biased perspective. If we know of a program that would be a good fit for you, or if it's in your area and we know the coach, it's obviously something we want to help you guys get to the next level. I know we have a lot of prospective lacrosse players listening right now. The NAI is a great home for you. It was a great home for John. I'm still going through it. I'll be here in the NAI this year and next year as a player. So if you guys have any questions, hit us up. We love the NAI. We love lacrosse, and adding more players like you will improve the level of play and grow the sport.
Yep.
I don't know. That's what I got.
That's all I got too, guys. I mean, hopefully you enjoy the content. 3 episodes in so far. I gotta say, I'm really enjoying it. I really enjoy being on YouTube as well. So hopefully y'all are like seeing us as much as we like being seen, I guess. I mean,
yeah, smash that subscribe button. I keep seeing more subscribers come in. The views are going up. They're going up and they're going up. So guys, share it. We'll continue doing this in YouTube form. I think the visual aspect's pretty fun. If it comes time for us to shift to a classic podcast, let us know if you prefer that. We can obviously upload it as a podcast without the visual as well, if that makes it easier on you. Whatever way we can get this content to you guys the quickest and in the most convenient manner, that's what we're here to do.
Yep. So we will see you, I guess, next week.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Let us know if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or you want to ask us a random line like Pro Sevens.